In 2007, Nokia sold more mobile phones than any company on Earth. Its market capitalization exceeded 250 billion euros. It employed 130,000 people. The mobile phone, as a product category, had been commercially defined by Nokia's engineering and industrial design for 15 years. In 2013, Nokia sold its mobile phone division to Microsoft for 5.4 billion euros, a price that represented approximately 2% of its peak value. 2 years later, Microsoft wrote down most of that acquisition. This is the Nokia smartphone failure story. And its most counterintuitive fact, the one that makes it worth examining carefully, is that Nokia's engineers had already built a working touchscreen smartphone prototype in 2004. 3 years before Apple launched the iPhone. The hardware existed. The question of what happened to it is the question this video is built around. The answer to that question is not a story about missing a technology. It is a story about what happens inside an organization when the people who see the future are not the same people who control the resources needed to build it. Nokia was founded in 1865 as a paper mill on the Nokia River in Tampere, Finland. It spent most of its first century producing paper, rubber, and cable. Its transformation into a technology company happened gradually through the 1970s and 1980s and accelerated when Finland deregulated its telecommunications market. Nokia's first commercially successful mobile phone, the Mobira Cityman 900, launched in 1987, weighing 800 grams. By 1992, under CEO Jorma Ollila, Nokia had made the decision to focus exclusively on telecommunications and divest its other businesses. The timing was extraordinary. The GSM standard for digital mobile communication was being established across Europe at exactly the moment Nokia committed its full resources to it. By 2000, Nokia controlled 28% of the global mobile phone market, more than Motorola, Ericsson, and Samsung combined. Its software platform, Symbian, ran on more smartphones than any competing operating system. The Nokia 3310, released in 2000, became the best-selling mobile phone model in history. The company had built the industry. The company's competitive advantages were real and reinforcing. Nokia's manufacturing scale allowed it to produce phones at cost points competitors could not match. Its carrier relationships, built over 15 years, gave it preferred placement in every major market. Its brand recognition was extraordinary. In many developing markets, Nokia had become a generic term for mobile phone. The moat around the business appeared, from the outside, to be total. Nokia's engineers were not unaware of where the mobile phone was heading. The Nokia Communicator series, launched in 1996, was a device that combined a mobile phone with a full keyboard, an email client, and a web browser. It was, in many respects, a smartphone before the term existed. Nokia's research division held patents on capacitive touchscreen technology that predated Apple's iPhone development. In 2004, 3 years before the iPhone, Nokia had a working prototype of a touchscreen device that bore significant resemblance to what Apple would launch in 2007. The prototype used capacitive touch, had a large screen relative to its size, and ran a version of Symbian designed for touch navigation. Internal documentation cited in subsequent research shows that Nokia engineers presented this device to senior management. The prototype did not become a product. What Nokia had in 2004 was more than a prototype. It had a research program in touchscreen technology, a software team working on touch-optimized interfaces, and engineers who understood what the convergence of mobile phone and internet-capable computer would mean for their market. What Nokia's organizational structure had was something different, a management culture that made it structurally difficult for this knowledge to produce the decisions that would have acted on it. The research that most precisely explains Nokia's failure was published not by business journalists, but by two academic researchers, Timo O. Vuori of Aalto University and Kwai-En Hui of INSAD, in the Administrative Science Quarterly in 2016. They conducted 76 interviews with Nokia executives, middle managers, and engineers between 2010 and 2011. What they documented was a specific organizational pathology, a culture of fear that prevented accurate information from flowing upward. Nokia's senior leadership, they found, had created an environment in which middle managers and engineers did not tell them things they needed to hear, not because they were dishonest, but because delivering bad news or challenging assumptions about the Symbian platform carried professional risks. Middle managers, caught between engineers who were telling them the touchscreen software was technically challenging, and senior leaders who expected confident progress reports, consistently reported the more optimistic picture upward. Engineers who had concerns about Nokia's competitive position relative to emerging software platforms, particularly as Apple's capabilities became clear after 2005, found that raising those concerns did not generate productive responses. The structural mechanism was Nokia's performance evaluation system. Engineers and managers were evaluated against targets set by senior leadership, targets that reflected an optimistic view of Symbian's capabilities. Engineers who raised concerns about Symbian's limitations, its architecture was designed for button navigation, not touch, and was known internally to be technically difficult to adapt, were seen as failing to meet their targets, not as providing valuable information. Vori and Hui called this distributed attention and shared emotions, a system in which fear was shared downward through the hierarchy and confidence was shared upward, regardless of what the underlying technical reality was. Nokia's senior leadership received a consistently confident picture of internal progress at precisely the moment when the competitive landscape was changing more rapidly than the internal picture reflected. On January 9, 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone. In the same week, specifically January 17th, Steve Ballmer of Microsoft gave an interview to USA Today in which he called the iPhone the most expensive phone ever with no chance of significant market share. Nokia's public response was similarly dismissive. The iPhone's price was indeed prohibitive. Its initial carrier exclusivity limited distribution, and it lacked features that Nokia's enterprise customers required. Internally, Nokia's engineers understood what the iPhone represented. Not because of its hardware. Nokia's hardware was in many respects superior, but because of its software. The iPhone ran a version of Mac OS X. It had been designed, from the ground up, as an internet-connected computer that happened to make phone calls. Nokia's Symbian was a phone operating system that had been extended to handle internet functions. The architectural difference was profound, and at the level of software development tooling and application ecosystem, not bridgeable in the medium term. Nokia's response over the following 3 years was not inaction. It was incoherent action. The company launched multiple touchscreen devices on Symbian, none of which achieved the software ecosystem that made the iPhone commercially dominant. It invested in a Linux-based alternative operating system called Maemo. It acquired Trolltech, a software company, to strengthen its software capabilities. In 2011, its new CEO, Stephen Elop, a former Microsoft executive, published an internal memo comparing Nokia's position to a man standing on a burning oil platform. The same year, Nokia announced a partnership with Microsoft to use Windows Phone as its primary smartphone operating system, effectively abandoning Symbian. The Nokia Lumia series of Windows Phone devices launched in 2011. They were, by most objective assessments, technically good products. They entered a market in which Apple and Android had already defined the application ecosystem. By 2013, Nokia's global smartphone market share had declined to under 3% from a position of market leadership 6 years earlier. On September 3, 2013, Microsoft announced the acquisition of Nokia's Devices and Services division for €5.4 billion, a figure that included a separate €1.65 billion patent license. The deal closed in April 2014. By 2016, Microsoft had written down the Nokia acquisition by approximately $7.6 billion and had laid off the majority of the former Nokia employees it had acquired. The Windows Phone platform was officially discontinued in 2017. Of Nokia's 130,000 employees at its peak, approximately 40,000 had been employed in Finland. The company's decline, through restructuring, sale, and the subsequent Microsoft write-down, resulted in the loss of over 20,000 finished jobs. Nokia as a company survived. It has continued as a telecommunications infrastructure and patent licensing business, generating significant revenues from the patents accumulated during its mobile era. It does not make consumer phones. The standard version of the Nokia story focuses on the iPhone, a competitor that arrived with better software and a better ecosystem and won. That version is accurate as far as it goes, but it describes a symptom, not a cause. Vori and Hui's research offers a more disturbing version, that Nokia's leadership did not lack information about its competitive position. It lacked accurate information. Its internal feedback system, the chain of reporting from engineers to middle managers to senior leadership, had been shaped by a performance culture that rewarded confidence and penalized concern. By the time the competitive situation became undeniable from the outside, it had been visible from the inside for years, to people who had concluded that saying so carried more personal risk than staying quiet. This is not a story about stupidity. Nokia's engineers were excellent. Nokia's managers were experienced professionals. Nokia's leadership had built one of the most successful technology businesses in history. The failure was systemic, the product of an incentive structure that made honest communication more personally costly than filtered communication, at precisely the moment when honest communication was most needed. Almost every large organization has a version of this structure. Almost every large organization has, somewhere inside it, an engineer holding a prototype that the organization is not ready to act on, for reasons that have more to do with internal politics than technical feasibility. The question the Nokia story leaves is, what would have had to be different for the information that existed in 2004 to have produced a different decision? And is there an equivalent of that prototype inside organizations you are familiar with? The comments are open. The Vori and Hui paper is open access through Administrative Science Quarterly. The Dawes and Wilson book is available through most university libraries. The sources list is in the description.